Welcome back to another episode of the Clever Angle Podcast. I'm your host, Tevin McGee, and today I have Shelby Ophof. She is a civil engineer here in Jonesboro, and she's going to be talking to us about her career, and I'm excited to hear about it. Shelby, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You were telling me off air that you used to host a podcast.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So I started a podcast with my best friend, Caitlin, my junior year of college, which is whenever things start getting pretty difficult with engineering. So I guess I picked like the worst time to start a podcast. But for a couple of months, we would try a different coffee every week, whether it be like a new way of brewing coffee or like a new type of latte or whatever. We would try a new coffee and give a little review, and then we would have a topic for that week that we would talk about, and episodes lasted anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour.
Where'd you get that idea from?
We both love coffee, and we both love to talk, and we both think that we're funny. And so we would always joke about starting a podcast, and then one day her boyfriend, now husband, was like, then do it. Let's start one, because he knows how to do all of the setting up and editing and all of that stuff. So he actually pushed us to do what we were joking about doing.
I will definitely put the link to the podcast in the show notes, and I guess I'll be the judge if you guys are funny or not. So we'll just start with a few icebreaker questions. I've got a deck of cards here for interviews. The first one, I kind of just picked three random ones out of here. Who would play you in a movie?
I used to always say Emma Stone because red hair, but I've been told a lot lately that I look like Emily Osment. Do you know who that is?
I'm not familiar with her work, I don't guess.
She plays Lily in Hannah Montana.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I can see that.
Yeah, so I've had multiple people come up and tell me that I look like her, which I take as a compliment. And I've even had family say it too, so I'm like, oh, I guess she would play me. She looks the most like me, and she's a good actress.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. Next question I have is, who is your favorite hero in fiction?
In fiction? Man, in fiction is hard. Probably, I don't even know if this would count as a hero, but I want to say Katniss Everdeen.
Okay.
Does that count?
No, Katniss is definitely a hero. Yeah.
Yes, I loved The Hunger Games. I still love The Hunger Games. I love The Hunger Games.
Did you read the books or just watch the movies?
Books. I've read the books multiple times, but I have seen all the movies, and they were all good, but those were my jam growing up.
I definitely think Catching Fire is my favorite Hunger Games.
Yes, it's my favorite too.
Really enjoyed watching that. For you what is your recurring nightmare?
Oh.
Like, do you have any dreams that you have to?
It's like scary. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So my mom is like my best friend, one of my favorite people on the planet, top 3. And I will, every couple of weeks, have a nightmare that she passes away. Yes, I know.
Oh,
That's so
okay.
morbid.
Yeah.
I know. But it's reoccurring. It's the only one I ever remember.
Yeah. I'm definitely one of those people that I don't really remember my dreams a lot, but every now and then I'll have something that's like super vivid happen to me. I need to look into what really causes that, because that's an interesting subject field.
Yeah.
My
you
wife
can do sleep
has
studies. You need to interview a sleep scientist. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah. Anyone that's listening, if you know a sleep scientist that would want to come on the show, I want to talk to you.
That'd be cool.
Okay, so let's just dive into your career and just your origin story a little bit. Can you give a brief summary about who you are, where you're from?
Yes, my maiden name is Blankenship, so my name is Shelby Blankenship, now Ophof. I was born and raised in Paragould, Arkansas, which is about 20 miles north of where we are right now.
Did you go to Paragould or Tech?
Paragould.
Okay.
Yeah, my mom taught there, so I went there K through 12. And then I grew up with divorced parents. I lived mainly with my mom, and then I would see my dad like every other weekend, and then sometimes on Tuesdays. And then I came to A-State for college, so I didn't move very far.
What do your parents do for work?
My mom used to be a teacher. She was a teacher for 16 years, and then this is why she's my hero. If you would have said non-fictional, I would have said my mom. She went to get her master's in education and federal programs while she was single with 3 girls and working 2 jobs. And so now she used to be the assistant superintendent at Harrisburg Schools, and now she's the superintendent there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you have 2 sisters?
Yes, I have 2 little sisters.
Do you have any brothers or just sisters?
I have 1 stepbrother and 1 adopted brother. So my dad, he was a farmer for 25 years, and now he's a banker. He does ag lending, and he adopted my little brother. And then I also have a stepbrother on my dad's side.
Do you have any memories from your childhood that just stand out?
I always vividly remember my mom ordering pizza and us sitting in the living room and eating brick oven pizza specifically and watching Dancing with the Stars. We would do that all the time. I think my mom just loved it, but my mom has a gift where she can make anything fun. She just makes anything and everything fun. And so, we didn't have a whole lot of money growing up, but she always made everything fun.
I love Dancing with the Stars and American Idol. And
yes, we watched America's Got Talent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So they are currently watching The Voice right now.
Yes.
So she loves to ugly cry to people's stories, and it's something that we do.
I did that on America's Got Talent.
Yeah, for sure. So what are some of your hobbies and things you like to do outside of work?
I love to read. I've got a book sitting right here. I read any chance that I get.
Do you usually read fiction, nonfiction?
Everything. I got into a kick where I liked American classics, and so I own a lot of American classics, but I've been reading a lot of sci-fi too lately. But that room in there has about 400 books in it.
Do you have any book recommendations? I've recently got back into reading. So,
what type of book do you like?
I like sci-fi, I like self-help books and productivity books and things like that. But my favorite fiction series as a kid was by James Patterson.
Yeah.
It was the Maximum Ride books.
Oh my gosh,
I love those books.
Did you ever read? I don't even know if he wrote these. Did you ever read the Scent books that he? I thought it was him that wrote it.
I think it was James Patterson. I've never read them. Are they any good?
They're so good. I have 3 of them in there. You're welcome to
yeah, for sure.
Legitimately, you can borrow one if you want.
Yeah.
They're about kids time traveling, and I read them in high school, and they're just phenomenal. So
I do remember that series, and
yes.
I'll take you up on that because I'm trying to get a balance of different types of books, that I'm reading. So I like to listen to a lot of stuff on Audible. So I'm listening to stuff while I'm driving, and
we lend out books all the time. So you're welcome to go in there after we record and look through and grab some.
Definitely look through your personal library for sure. In your own words, can you give the listeners a definition of what is civil engineering?
Yeah. So I actually didn't even know what it was until I started with the major. I just knew that I loved math and that I loved building with Legos. But civil engineering, in a nutshell, is the design and the maintenance and construction of anything in an infrastructure that is stationary, which is hard to explain. So a civil engineer designed the structure of the building that we're in right now, and a civil engineer designed the foundation of this building so that this building doesn't sink into the ground, because there's a bunch of clay in Arkansas. That's why we're so good with farming, because we have the clay that's perfect for rice farming, horrible for infrastructure design because clay sinks. A civil engineer designed the foundation of it. A civil engineer designed all of the utilities, like the sewer, the water, the storm drainage of everything in Jonesboro, and the roadways. There's a lot of different things that you can go into with civil engineering. So you can do infrastructure design, which is what I do. You can do environmental engineering, transportation engineering, structural engineering, which I'm wanting to get my master's in. This is really cool. But there's a huge expanse of different jobs that you can get with it.
So when you said stationary, what would be an example of something that's not stationary? And who would
a car.
Okay, so who would design cars and things like that?
A mechanical engineer would do those.
Engineer. Okay.
And then conveyor belts, Hytrol, they do conveyors, and mechanical engineers design those. Yep. So anything that's moving, basically. I always joke about that like mechanical engineers design things that are supposed to move, and civil engineers design things that are not supposed to move.
Okay, that's a good way to
Yeah.
come with that. I've always wondered that. So where would an electrical engineer fall in the...
They design iPhones,
Oh,
actually. So an
okay.
electrical engineer designed an iPhone. They do a lot of stuff. It's similar to mechanical. Their classes were very similar. They have a lot of computer science in theirs, so there's a lot of coding involved with electrical engineering. A lot of times whenever people think electrical engineering, they think electrician, but it's more of like the design aspect of it. So they can like design electrical systems for a building. I actually had an electrical engineering major on my senior design team last year, and our senior design project was to design a new building for the computer science and engineering college at A-State. And so I designed the superstructure of it, like all of the foundation and all of the columns and the reinforcement in them and everything, and then he designed the electrical layout of how everything would work and get put back into the system.
So when you say electrical like design and things like that, so are we just talking about like how the lights are going to be in the buildings, or like, because an iPhone is a lot different than like the infrastructure of the layout of a building or something.
Yeah,
so.
In the same way that like designing of the foundation of this building is completely different from designing a sewer system.
Yeah.
Those two civil engineers did both of those things, and an electrical engineer can design an iPhone or design a electrical layout of a building. I don't know a ton about it because I only ever took circuits in college, but I do know there are a whole bunch of codes that they have to meet, and there's a whole lot of ins and outs with like electricity. You can't have too much, you can't have too little. There's a certain level you have to meet to be able to supply everything, and yeah, that's pretty much as far as my knowledge goes with it, though.
No, that's fascinating. Me and my brother talk about things like that all the time, about like how things work and how awesome it is to be able to have an iPhone that can do all the things that it can do. So you mentioned liking math. Can you tell us a little bit about what was your schooling like, high school, junior high? Did you always excel in math, and did you always see yourself going into a career like that?
I was definitely an overachiever growing up, which it wasn't actually instilled in me by my parents. My parents were never like, you have to make good grades or blah. I always just put that pressure on myself, like I wanted to excel and do well.
What do you think that came from?
I have no clue. I think
Just in you.
Yeah, it's just the determination in me. Yeah. It wasn't even like a comparison thing to other people. It was just like I loved how I felt whenever I had done well on something. But it was never pressured onto me like by either of my parents growing up at all. But I started loving math actually in middle school. I could tell you the exact teacher that it was. I'll probably send him the link to this podcast. His name's Jerry Dixon. He was my 6th grade math teacher. And that was when we first started learning a lot of algebra. So that's whenever the variables were introduced, whenever you start adding in the letters. And I just loved it. I loved the problem solving. I loved the way that my brain had to think whenever I was solving all of these problems. And the way that he taught was phenomenal and made it really fun. And from then on out, my favorite subject was math. And in high school, I took 2 extra maths than I needed to graduate because I loved it so much. So it was just, yeah, that was my favorite.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I think there'd be a lot of people that would disagree with you with math being their favorite. But that's cool that you found something in 6th grade that you really latched onto. You're in high school now. You're getting ready to graduate.
Yes.
What was your plan looking like going into college?
I kind of went all over the place. I actually, for a second, thought about majoring in marketing just because I really wanted to work for the St. Louis Cardinals. That was why. I love baseball. I love watching the Cardinals. I used to watch them with my dad growing up. I still keep up with them. And so I started out wanting to do marketing, and I started looking into, okay, what are ways that I can use my gifts and my passion for math and still work for them? And so then I was going to do statistics. I was going to get my master's in statistics and be a statistician for the Cardinals. So basically do all of the math and the logarithms to come up with their stats, which sounds so cool to me still. And then I actually call it you know how there are just like singular moments in your life that like completely shift the trajectory of how your life's going to go?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this single moment, my dad had a friend over at his house. His name's Casey, I think. He went to high school with my mom. He's a chemical engineer. He was over and I was a junior in high school. He was like, Shelby, what are you going to do? As most people ask you, your junior and senior year of high school. And I was like, I think I'm going to be a statistician for the Cardinals. And he was an engineer. And so he looked at me. He was like, you should look into engineering. I think that you would enjoy it. And that was all he said. In that one moment, I was like, okay, I'll look into engineering. Was pretty nonchalant about it, and I spent the next like week or so researching what engineering was, and then decided that I was going to do it like within a couple of days. Like that one sentence that someone said to me like shifted my whole life.
That's interesting. So how did you come up with, because it seems like all of the engineerings have to do with math to some degree.
Yeah.
How did you with civil engineering?
So I actually started out mechanical. My first semester, I was mechanical engineering, and I interned at Hytrol, which was a great place to work. I loved it. Mechanical isn't just the way that my brain worked, but that's one of the really cool things about engineering. Like within civil engineering, you have different types of people whose brains work differently, and they go into different fields, but it's the same way in the umbrella of engineering. My brain just works differently than a mechanical engineer's does. The classes that they took that we would have to take, I just couldn't ever wrap my mind around. My brain just didn't work that way, and that's okay. But they would take classes that were the foundation of civil engineering, and they just couldn't wrap their mind around it. And those classes were my favorite. And so a lot of their classes were movement. So like movement of fluids, movement of machines, movement of materials, and like all of the math and physics behind all of that. And then ours, the basis of civil engineering is one class. You could go into a civil engineering career and use this one class easily. It's called statics, which is stationary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's basically, we would always laugh about how you can sum up statics in one equation, and it's the sum of the forces equals 0. You want all of your forces to equal 0 so that this isn't moving, this object is not moving, and you're having to do all of the math and physics at different angles and everything to determine where this object is going. And that was my favorite class I ever took all of college.
So are there classes that no matter which engineering path that you take that you have to take?
Yes. Yeah.
What are those classes?
Statics is one of them. We all had to take dynamics, which is a lot like statics, and it was very similar to physics. A lot of vectors, which is basically like an equation that describes an object in movement. So if I throw a baseball and you know how tall I am and you know how much force I put into throwing that baseball, you can and what angle I threw it at, you can determine how high it's going to go and how far it's going to go and how much the force is going to be when it hits the ground. That's the stuff that we would do. And then as a civil engineer, we got to choose between thermodynamics and electrical circuits, which is a mechanical and an electrical class. And I chose electro circuits because it sounded cool and I wanted to do it. And I have a computer science minor, so I thought it would help a little bit with it.
That's fascinating. So do you, with that minor, do you know how to code in it?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. I think the hardest class I took was a coding class in college. It was called object-oriented programming. And
is that like Python? What kind of
we did C++.
C++.
Yeah, which is very intricate is the best word I can come up with. But we were like, we were basically just given a problem and I had to write a code that would solve it, but also follow all of the sentence structure of it. So basically, whenever you're coding, you're creating the bridge language between a human and the computer. And it was just a completely different way of thinking. And the way of thinking and coding, I felt helped me a lot with my engineering stuff too, because of just the problem solving aspect of it. So you can't like Google the end.
Yeah. We talked a little bit earlier before we started about different podcasts that we listen to. And there was a year or two where I went down like a rabbit hole on how to learn how to code. And there was this podcast. It was called learn to code with me. So it would be the host would bring on different people that would have transitioned from like a teacher or some other degree, and now they've learned how to code and taken jobs in the tech space. That's cool that you got to do some of that in your minor, because computers and things like that have always fascinated me. Do you have to use any of that in your job, like any coding or anything?
Not really. Right now, we have an IT department that does all of that stuff, but I took classes like operating systems and things like that, and so I'm by far not an expert solving OS problems, don't get me wrong, but not in my job now, but in my previous job, we had a problem come up where we were trying to get a specific type of file to work with our program. And I was like, I just know that there's a way that we can switch this file type in the operating system. I just don't remember how to do it. And it took me a little bit of researching, and then it clicked in my brain. I was like, yes, okay, I remember now. And I was able to show my boss how to switch this file type over using the operating system, like using the I don't even remember what it's called, using the interface that you code in to switch over the file type.
No, that's
hadn't done it in 3 years.
Yeah. You're in your undergrad degree, and were you required to do an internship? I know you said you did an internship with, did you say Hydro?
Yes, I interned with them I was with them from spring of 2019 when I graduated high school. So I started with them the Friday after I graduated high school. And then I was with them until December of 2020. And then I actually moved to some architects. So I interned at an architecture firm here in town for 2 years.
And this wasn't through ASU?
No, they didn't require anything, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
I wish they would. Most people ended up getting internships, but a lot of people had jobs and couldn't because they're paying for their own school.
So how did you find these internships, these opportunities?
I actually job shadowed an engineer my senior year, and that was how I got in there, because my school did a job shadowing thing with seniors. And then with the architects, I knew that I wanted to do something with building infrastructure, whether it be structural or what I'm doing now with infrastructure design. I knew I wanted to do that. And there were no civil engineering internships open. And architects work a lot very closely with civil engineers because of the site design aspect of it. And I literally just called this architecture firm and asked if they wanted to hire an intern. And they were like, yeah, come in tomorrow for an interview. So I went in for an interview, and I worked there for 2 years.
So, they don't require you to have an internship. Would this be something to recommend to somebody that wants to get into?
Yes, absolutely. I know that my experience in internships is what got me the job that I have right now. So
the job that you have right now, is this your first job school, like officially? Or?
I actually interned at a different job for my last semester of college, just spring of my senior year. It was literally the only thing available. And it was in transportation, which is great, and we need it. It's just I'm not interested in it.
So with transportation, would that be mechanical engineering, or does that still be civil?
It'd still be civil, which is a very common misconception, because with transportation engineering, you're not designing the cars, you're designing the roadways.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's what you mean by
transportation. Yeah. We did pavement design, so there's got to be like a specific, like every type of pavement's different, and it's based on the vehicle loading and the environment and what materials are available and all of this other stuff. And there's a lot to do with like flood elevation, so flood elevation is very important in my career too. We're in a flood zone right now because of, you just think of all of the rivers that are around us. So there are different areas that are determined as flood zone areas, which means they are they have a 1% chance of flooding within the next 100 years, which doesn't seem like much, but it's pretty far up there in like the grand scheme. And so we have to design all of our roadways and all of our buildings based off of this flood elevation. And so gets into a lot of like transportation engineering as well. And then a lot of roadway design is also whenever you're going around a curve and it like super elevates to the side, we have to determine the degree of that super elevation so that the car doesn't flip over based on the speed and the weight of the car and all of that stuff. And there are different codes that you have to meet with how big of a turn you can pull off with a certain speed that the car is going. So it's based on this posted speed. Yeah. And then there's a lot of traffic engineering involved where you're studying crashes and the reasons for crashes, which gets into like human behaviors, which was difficult. So it's very interesting though.
So take me through the interview process of the job that you're currently at right now. What was that like, and what does the interview look like for a civil engineering job?
Yeah, this was, I guess, my first experience. So I get it could be completely different for other people, but I actually found the job on LinkedIn because I've got a LinkedIn account, and my boss at my other job knew that I didn't want to do transportation engineering long term. Like I had told him that whenever I got the internship, so he was aware of that. But I basically read about this company and did a quick like follow them on LinkedIn, and then one of their HR people reached out to me and said, "Hey, I see you're open to work and that you're in Jonesboro. We actually just started a new location in Jonesboro, and we're hiring a civil engineer EI, which stands for engineer intern, which is technically what I am. So E is a license. So I had to take a license exam last year that I passed, and I got my EI license. And then I work in my field for at least 3 years. It can be more. And then I take my PE exam, which is my professional engineering license. And then my name is what gets stamped on projects. That'll be another 3 years.
Is it like that kind of licensing procedure for all engineering?
Yes, and actually for structural, you have to take an extra one. So you have your FE, which is the one I've passed, and then you have your PE, and then you have your SE, your structural engineering license. And so because their work is so important, like it can't fail. If a roadway fails, it's very different from a building collapsing. They have to take an extra license exam. I guess I just like to make things hard on myself because that's what I want to do. But yeah, this lady in HR was like, "We're actually hiring a civil engineer EI. Can I set up an interview with you?" And I said yes. So we talked on the phone for about an hour, and then she scheduled me an interview with my now boss at Craftental, which is where I work. And we had about an hour and a half interview, and then I heard from them probably 2 or 3 days later after that interview, and they sent me the offer letter with everything on it and wanted to offer me the job. It was a pretty quick process. Not very stressful. I think that they interviewed 3 other people. That's what my boss told me.
Okay. So you accept the offer. You're
Yes.
super excited about that. What does your first day on the job look like?
So I walk in and I have my own office, which is, I'm like flabbergasted by having my own office. And they set me in my office, show me how to log into my computer, like what my username is, all of this stuff. And then on the very first day, they do a training orientation. And they have a training orientation every 2 weeks. So they try to have new hires start every 2 weeks, clockwork. And it's a pretty big company. We've got over 300 employees, and we're hiring people all the time. Jonesboro is actually the smallest location. We only have 9 people there. But the CEO actually is in this training and is talking to all of us. And he's talking to all of us like we're his equal, not like his subordinate, which I really appreciated about him. He just talked to us all like we were old friends. And they just walk through the process of our benefits and what the training process is going to look like. And yeah, so my first day was mainly spent doing this like training session.
So was this your first job or in high school or anything?
Yeah, I worked through high school.
Did you have through high school?
I worked at a gas station for about 6 months. It was horrible. I was 16 and I would work by myself from 4 to 11 on school nights. It was horrible. And then I worked as a sales associate at a place called Factory Connection in Paragould. Love it. Still love all the people there. I just left because I went to college. But I was there for 3 years. I loved it there. So.
Okay. You got set up, and what have you been working on at this job since?
Got, in the best way possible, they basically threw me in the deep end and wanted me to learn how to swim, which is, I honestly appreciated that I didn't feel micromanaged or anything, and that they trusted me to ask the right questions when I needed to ask them. So the way that my boss trains is by giving me a project and giving me the information I need and allowing me to ask the questions that I need to solve the problem, which I really appreciate. And right now, on the day-to-day, I'm semi-managing a lot of my own projects. I'll go to my boss for a lot of things, but as far as just the day-to-day of a project, I mainly do site design, which includes grading and drainage, so making sure water flows where it's supposed to go without any flooding happening, or ponding, which can cause erosion and is a whole issue. And then I do sewer design and water design and erosion control. And a lot of that deals with flood elevations, like I talked about earlier. And I'm like emailing clients, emailing fire marshals, emailing RDOT, emailing the city of Jonesboro, talking to City Water Light, because we have a whole bunch of codes that we have to meet. And so I'm just trying to meet all these codes with our projects.
I was just going to ask you if that relationship with City Water and Light, if you had one with them. My sister works there, so I didn't know if that was like some kind of what capacity you work with the city. Yeah.
I talk to them for just about every project that we have in Jonesboro, which is most of my projects.
Really?
Yes.
I'll have to ask her, but my sister actually works in the engineering department.
Oh, really?
At City Water and Light.
She probably assumed my name.
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah. So what projects are you working on right now?
Oh, man, there's so many. We actually just wrapped up a project in Pocahontas at Pico Foods. Designed the site, drainage, utilities, all of that for a new expansion called Control Atmosphere Stunning at Pico Foods, because they have chickens. So it's a more humane way to, like, basically kill the chickens. And now McDonald's and a lot of places are requiring that this controlled stunning be used on the chickens because it's the most humane way. And so we had to design, we were given the floor plan of the expansion, and we just designed all of the civil aspects of it. And then I'm working on quite a few smaller projects. So I have a bunch of very small sized projects, all less than 5 acres. So I've got a couple of apartment complexes that I'm designing the drainage, and I've got a rezoning where we're trying to rezone a couple of things, which gets into real estate, which is not what I would expect to be doing. But if a plat of land is a commercial 3 zone and we want to bring it to a residential 1 zone, there's a whole process you have to go through with the city to get that approved, and the council has to vote on it. So I've got a ton of just like smaller projects so that I can learn quicker, so that it doesn't take as long basically to do all of the design. Mm-hmm.
So would you say that there was a big shock going from learning about this stuff to actually applying it?
Yes. I have learned more in the last 3 months than I did in school, which is what every engineer says. And I love A-State. That is not a diss on A-State. I got a very good education at A-State, and I would go back and redo it again at A-State if I was given the choice. But you just learn more whenever you're in the field. And civil engineering school doesn't even get into a whole lot of infrastructure design. It mainly focuses on structural and environmental and water. That's the 3 main things that we had classes in. And transportation. We had some transportation. But infrastructure design and like site stuff like I'm doing wasn't really taught because it's so hands-on. And every project is so different because you've got so many different people involved and every site looks different. And so I've definitely learned so much in the last 3 months. Like every week it feels like I'm drinking out of a fire hose.
Yeah. Just information overload.
Yes, but I love it.
So
I like it that way.
How long have you been doing this position so far?
I've been there since September 5th. I started the day after Labor Day, so it's easy to remember.
Okay. So what are some skills outside of school that you think are essential for being a good civil engineer? Definitely
people skills, which you wouldn't expect. So I have to talk to a lot of clients. I have to, professionalism. I have to be able to communicate with my clients and with the city and with a bunch of important people that have way more knowledge than I do. Just effective communication is really important. And Also effective communication in the sense of answering your emails and being good at communicating a problem or a question so that it's clear to the person that you're talking to so that they can answer it appropriately for you. And also humbleness. Like, you have to humble yourself whenever you're coming into a completely different career and atmosphere. And we have a student intern, so I'm not technically at the bottom of the totem pole, but besides the student intern, I am. And so just being humble and knowing that you don't know everything and allowing people to teach you is important. I don't think you can learn everything that you need to learn if you go into it with an attitude of thinking everything. That's a big one.
Would you consider yourself introverted or extroverted? Does this change like inside and outside of work?
Definitely extroverted. I would not say it changes. I actually got married in October and I was gone for about a week on my honeymoon, and I got back and everybody in the office was like, it was so quiet without you here because I just talk all the time. So definitely extrovert.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Do you think that to be successful in engineering, that is something that if you're an introvert that you need to develop some of those extroverted skills? Because you said people skills is very important, effective communication. Do you think that's something that you would have to do if?
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily would have to be an extrovert, which I'm an extrovert to an extreme. Like, I'm at 100%. There's no, I'm not in the middle by any means. But I definitely graduated with some introverted people that are going to be really good engineers. And they're effective communicators, but they only communicate when they have to, which is absolutely fine. So effective communication is definitely, I wouldn't say a requirement, but it's a skill that should be learned if you're going to do your job well and you want to excel at your job and maybe one day get a raise or move up or whatever. But being an extrovert isn't.
Do you have any tips for kind of developing that skill?
I mean, talking to people is one. Getting advice from someone wiser than you, not necessarily older, but wiser. We learned a lot of professionalism in school, but a lot of it is just by doing. I learn by emailing people and making mistakes. The other day, I was not paying attention to what I was doing, and I accidentally sent the wrong email to the wrong person, and I had to respond and immediately apologize to them, and that was my fault. I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. But I learned from my mistake, and I'm going to double check where I'm sending an email from now on. Just like learning from your mistakes. And yeah, professionalism is a weird thing because I feel like I'm still so young, so I wouldn't be able to teach professionalism to someone. But from what I've learned, it's just been by doing and watching other people that are wiser than me.
Did you ever take like oral comm in school?
Yes, I took it in high school. And college.
And college?
Yes.
How was that experience for you? Because it's one of those things that I feel like I have to exert so much energy when I'm overly extroverted. In the right situations, it comes natural for me. But giving a speech or something was something that I could do it, but I always just felt so drained afterwards. How was your experience for doing oral comm?
I'm actually the exact same way. I love talking one-on-one like this, what we're doing right now. I could do this for another 6 hours and be fine. But if I get put up on a stage in front of people, I'm going to pass out. It's just something about it. I struggled with oral comm really bad, and I ended up doing fine in both of them. But a lot of it was the memorization aspect. So my speeches were always over something I just had to memorize. It was never over something I was really passionate about. But with my job, if I know what I'm talking about and I'm able to go to someone and tell them about what I'm doing and ask a question, my mind is so focused on what I'm talking about that I'm not even paying attention to the people looking at me. And oral comm was not like that. It was very different.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, there's just something very unnerving about just a whole bunch of eyes on you.
Yes.
And they're listening, and even if they're
facial expressions.
Yeah, gosh, it's tough. And it's one thing that I like about podcasting is, okay, I can talk to somebody one-on-one, and then I can just put it out into the ether, and y'all can listen to it, but it's not me there actively getting that feedback or looks or things like that. Definitely excel in the smaller group settings for sure.
Definitely.
So that's interesting. Where do you see yourself career-wise in 5 years?
5 years, man. I really enjoy my company, so I would like to still be with them. I really like them a lot, just their attitude about things and the way they treat their employees. It's been a really good place to work, and everyone else I work with says the same thing. And there are a lot of opportunities internally to move up, and I'm wanting to do structural long term, which if that doesn't work out, I do enjoy what I'm doing right now, and I can always do both. I know a ton of engineers that have a geotechnical license and a transportation license, so it wouldn't be weird for me to get a structural license and an infrastructure license. But I would like to be doing some kind of structural work, hopefully within this company. But thankfully, it's all over the state, and so we could relatively move anywhere, and I can either work in a different office or work remotely. I would be okay with any of those.
It's interesting that you said you could do civil engineering remotely.
Yes.
Would that be something that you'd be interested in, or do you like the aspect of being around people in the office?
I do love the aspect of being around people. I was actually given the option of working remotely whenever I started, and I didn't want to, but it's an option for if I go on a trip or something, I can bring my laptop with me, and our laptops plug into our computer monitors, and so everything is projected onto our 2 computer monitors, but I can just unplug my ginormous gaming laptop and take it with me and do everything I need to do on it and just call my boss if I have a question or something. But all of the files and everything that I need is within that computer, that operating system. It's very nice.
Yeah, that's cool. So what is some advice that you would give to somebody that's wanting to get into the field? If you had to give them a roadmap on, if you want to become a civil engineer, this is what you need to start doing today to get there. What's the roadmap to becoming a civil engineer, in your opinion?
Definitely get an internship. The people that had internships got the jobs. The people that had the internships got the jobs. I guess there's no way to sugarcoat that. And don't worry about your grades. Obviously pass, but I worried too much about my grades. I actually got the highest GPA award in engineering, but I feel like I missed out on so much of the college experience because all I did was study. And I don't have a very good memory, and so whenever I did study, I had to know the material. I couldn't just memorize it for 24 hours and be fine. And I was just constantly studying and doing homework and doing stuff for school, worried so much about my GPA. No one else cared about my GPA. And yes, I got this cool award at the end of the day, but that award isn't what's going to get me jobs. It was my internships. I would say get an internship, hands-on learning. Don't worry so much about your grades, but don't give in minimal effort and barely pass your classes, obviously.
Yeah, somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the middle.
Don't be like me, but don't be C's get degrees.
Yeah. So get at least a B+ in college, get an internship, 4-year degree. Is there anything else that they need if they want to pursue this degree? Would you say that it was necessary for you to have a minor in computer science, or
No.
is that just something that you...
Yeah, that was just a skill that I wanted to have legitimately just because I was interested in it. I think I was the only, or I am the only person that has done civil engineering and got a minor in computer science. It was a very strange thing to do. Like, people would give me weird looks.
Yeah. Are there other minors that, if someone wanted to get a minor, they complement the engineering degree?
Yes. There's actually a new electrical engineering minor at A-State, and a lot of civil engineers did that just because they work closely together. You're going to be working with electrical engineers, and depending on your field you go into, and then also plant science. I actually almost did that because you can get a plant science degree and then go into some kind of like agricultural engineering, which is very good for this area. So plant science is a good one. And then a lot of people got math minors. It was quite literally 2 more classes to get a minor, and so people would just take a summer class for two summers and get a math minor so they could say that they had it. And then it's just that extra math course, or those extra math courses, just to help you with problem solving in your job.
So this is like a off the wall question, but if you weren't doing civil engineering, what is another career field that you would want to pursue?
Probably Statistics.
St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, I took statistics. I had to take 2 statistics classes for my major, and I liked both of them a lot. Yeah. But I probably would have ended up doing that and then getting a master's in statistics. And depending on how my husband felt about it, worked for the St. Louis Cardinals, moved to St. Louis. That was my dream job my junior year of college. I would probably do something with that.
No, that's awesome. And it's awesome that you knew what you wanted to do from a relatively early age. That's just one of my goals, is to give clarity to some people that are on the fence about what they want to do, not sure if they'd be interested or not, just to hear stories like yours and to be inspired to try something new. So
if anyone ever wants to reach out to me and ask questions, I will, to the best of my ability, answer them. But I also work with a lot of people that can help answer them too.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put your email where you can get connected to Shelby in the show notes. Is there anything else that you want to add about your career field, or you want the listeners to know before we let you go?
I think that's it. My career is very complex, but also very simple at the same time, if that makes any sense. There's a lot of ins and outs to it, but I think that anyone, as long as they're hardworking, you don't have to be smart to engineering. A lot of people will hear that I'm a civil engineer and they're just like, wow, you're really smart. And I'm like, actually, I'm not that smart. I just work my butt off.
Yeah. I don't know. Somebody that enjoys math is pretty smart to me. So
no, it's just the passion that I was given. But I was definitely, both my parents are hardworking, so I got that from both of them. But I knew I'm not the smartest person that graduated in my class from A-State last May. I know that, and I'm okay with that. But I was probably the hardest worker because I had to. I'm just not gifted. I had to work my butt off, and I did. Anybody can do it if they work hard. Definitely.
Well, Shelby, I appreciate you taking the time, and thanks for having me, hosting me in your home to do this interview on short notice. This has been another episode of the Clever Angle podcast. I will put all the links in below to Shelby's podcast and where we can connect with her about your civil engineering questions. And I appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Absolutely. Until next time. Peace. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Clever Angle podcast. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get podcasts, and we will see you next week.